biological sex was the thing that they had to do. So therefore, you would have trans men having to use female toilets and trans women having to use male toilets unless they had a gender recognition certificate. I'm genuinely trying to find out what the implication of what she's announced, without any papers before us, to look at and ask are.
The Honourable Lady asks a very good question. And the way I would explain it is that this is not an issue that we had before. I wish we didn't have to make these changes. But the fact is, many trans people were living their lives peacefully and with dignity until others started exploiting the loopholes. It is not trans people that we are trying to limit. It is the predators who are using the loopholes and giving the trans community a bad name. So what we are trying to protect is the example I used before, male prisoners going into female prisons while claiming that they are the female. We need to continue to provide clarity because many public authorities are confused. They don't understand. People should use the toilets for their biological sex in the vast majority of cases. In some cases, that will be very difficult. But we need to provide more clarity so that predators do not exploit the loophole. That is what we're trying to do. As I said, in the vast majority of cases. But what we're trying to do is to protect vulnerable people.
Tom Hunt.
Speaker, it's the first time I've commented on this issue. Recently, this concept called the gender-bred person was found on a school intranet in Ipswich, and it promoted the idea that biology doesn't matter, it's always about what's in your head. It was complete self-identification. It also promoted outdated gender stereotypes. It had a list of hobbies and jobs associated with men and women. So presumably, if you like football, somebody might talk to you and say, well, actually, have you thought about actually being a boy, which is completely regressive. Does the Minister agree with me that there is no place for a gender-bred person in schools at all? And does she also agree with me that in primary schools we should be incredibly careful about promoting anything to do with gender ideology?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend raises a very good point, and it is one of the things that I am seeking to resolve. Because we have not provided clarity in the law, a lot of the space has been filled by many dubious organisations producing very, very dubious materials with no basis in biology, in the law whatsoever, but they're pushing it because they think that they get away with it. I think we as a government have a responsibility to clear out this material from schools. I think the Secretary of State for Education is looking at the materials that are being taught under RSHE, but it is very important, I think the point he makes is very clear, that primary school children in particular need to be protected. That is why the guidance we are going to be putting out on gender questioning children is going to address this issue, except in the most extreme safeguarding cases, and I expect that to include clinical advice. You should not be socially transitioning any primary school children at all, or introducing them to this theory.
Leonici.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for coming here and making this statement, because my and my constituents' fear has been that there's been such aggressive activism with regard to this that actually it puts not only gay and lesbian people in real danger of hate crimes and different activism going on, but also to protect men, boys, women and girls, because my biggest fear in all of this is that actually we have self-identifying men in particular who will actually cause confusion for women who still do not have equality, especially with regard to health treatment and making sure that they are safe in single-sex spaces.
I think my honourable friend is quite right. We need to make sure that we are providing accurate data, and hospitals in particular, but loads of public authorities across the board know exactly who it is and what they are dealing with. We've seen examples, for instance, of people not receiving the right medical care because they were wrongly identified as the wrong sex because of possession of GRC or a self-declared difference in sex or gender. We need to make sure that that is not happening. We've seen issues across the board. The ONS is again looking at the census which it carried out to see what it can do to make make things clearer, because it was quite obvious that many people who completed the census did not understand the question. And that is what we're trying to say, that this is a new space, a new area. Lots of things are developing. We should not be rushing to legislate. We should be legislating very carefully. That is why many of the things people have been expecting are taking time. We're waiting for the CAS review, but we will carry out this work.
Jonathan Lord.
A few years ago, a loving, caring, intelligent, thoughtful married couple came to me in my surgery, very distressed, because they just found out that their child had been questioning their gender at school, and the school for several months had not informed them. This child had been counselled by two adults who had no appropriate qualifications at all. As we seek clarity on the law and the guidelines here, can my right honourable friend reassure me that parents will be informed and included in those conversations, except in the most extraordinary circumstances?
I can confirm that. That is exactly one of the things that I wanted to make sure we saw in the guidance for gender questioning children. It is absurd for such a significant change to be taking place without parents knowing what is going on. Yes, of course, in the most extreme circumstances, that may not be possible, but the vast majority of parents love their children and care for them. We should not treat parents as the enemy here. They need to know what is going on, because quite a lot of the time, gender questioning children have comorbidities. Perhaps they are autistic, perhaps there is something else that is going on in the mental health space that needs clinical advice rather than just put on the pathway for social transition.
Brendan Clark-Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for giving us this reassurance that this government remains committed to protecting women's rights, protecting children with policies that are based on biological reality and not extreme ideology conflating sex and gender. And does she agree that today's statement will help stop people finding loopholes around this?
Secretary of State.
Yes, I do agree. The purpose of this SI is to provide clarity. The law has not really been updated since 2011. We need to be more frequent in terms of making sure that we're keeping up with what is going on in this space. The SI, just in answer to earlier questions, the SI was laid at 12 p.m. I'm sorry that it is not ready. For members, but that is exactly what the legislation is intended to, and I do agree with my honourable friend.
Jonathan Gullis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As someone who spent their entire professional career working in state secondary schools as a teacher, the one place where debates around gender self-identification should never apply is with children. And just like the divisive critical race theory that we've seen enter our school, we're now seeing the equally divisive gender ideology too. So can the Secretary of State outline for my residents in Stoke-on-Trent, North Kidsgrove and Talk that her announcement today will help to seek to clarify and make sure the classroom is a safe space for vulnerable young people?
I really welcome the intervention by my honourable friend. As a teacher, he knows how carefully we need to look after children and make sure that we are safeguarding across the board. That is quite right. This legislation, this SI, is just one step that we are taking in order to provide clarity. There will be more. There will be more coming. Not all of it will be legislative, but there will be measures brought to. There will be measures which will be bringing into place that will help people understand exactly what is going on. We should not assume that the knowledge that we have in this House is present in the population. I have met people who don't understand the difference between being gay or being trans. The Honourable Lady is complaining that my answers are long. It's because I want people to hear the truth and to understand what it is that we as a government are doing.
James Daly.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It seems that the main feature of countries that have come off this list is in their adoption of laws which remove all safeguards that exist around changing gender. Does my right honourable friend agree that this approach is dangerous, and what further steps is she taking to address its expansion?
I thank my honourable friend. I cannot control what it is that other countries do. All we can do is emphasise what our own policies are. We do have conversations with international counterparts across the House. There has been actually a lot of interest in what we are doing. I remember speaking, I won't name the country, a minister for another country who said that they had brought in self-ID early in theirs because they thought we were going to do it, and they were thinking again. There are actually countries internationally, even in Europe, who are taking steps to limit this because they're seeing the consequences and they don't think that the benefits outweigh the disbenefits. And I'm glad that we in the UK are setting a standard for evidence-based policy making and showing others how to get this right.
Point of order. Relating to the statement.
I will take the point of order relating to this statement because I think the Secretary of State might be able to clarify it. Point of order, Stephen Down.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And further to the point I raised in my question to the Secretary of State about the information that hadn't been provided to the House, I do have a list here which appears to be a list of countries and territories which are changing status as a result of the statement and the order that's being laid, but it doesn't appear to have been published or available in the Vote Office. And it includes a large number of Australian states, Canadian provinces, United States including Colorado, New Mexico, New York City, New York State, and other places, and actually a number of European countries, Malta, Mexico in Latin America, Luxembourg, many other locations. I just wondered if the Secretary of State could confirm for the House's interest whether that list is correct or not.
First of all, could I just say, I believe that the Secretary of State did confirm that the order has been laid and it should therefore be available in the Vote Office, but the Secretary of State might like to confirm that, or to say that she might, if she does not have the information immediately available, that I'll be able to report it back. Secretary of State.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to confirm that it has been laid. I've just heard from officials that it has been laid.
And we will ensure that it is available in the Vote Office.
It was laid well before the statement to the House. I'm sorry it hasn't been published, but it was laid, so we have done our bit.
I think the Secretary of State has confirmed that it was laid. We will find out why it wasn't in the Vote Office and come back to the point of order. Shadow Leader of the House, Lucy Powell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wonder if you have been given notice of any oral statement by the Home Secretary today, given he yesterday signed a treaty with Rwanda. As you are aware, Madam Deputy Speaker, the government has repeatedly made major announcements outside this House and has not been forthcoming in bringing these opportunities to members to scrutinise them here. I note that the Home Secretary was in fact in his place today for Prime Minister's questions, so would have been able to give an oral statement. And can you also confirm that statements can be made at any time during the day, and have you been given notice that one will be made later today?
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her point of order and for giving notice of it. As she knows, the Speaker has been very clear on the importance of ministers making statements first to this House. I can confirm that it is possible for a statement to be made at an unusual time, i.e. not straight after questions as would be the norm. The government would need to notify the Speaker of their wish to do so, and if that does happen later today, I'm sure that the whole House will be notified in good time. Thank you. Point of order, Alison McGovern.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And on a point of order, I'd like to seek your advice, because on the 6th of December 1923, the first 3 female Labour members of Parliament were elected. Margaret Bonfield, Dorothy Jewson and Susan Lawrence. And these 3 women, Madam Deputy Speaker, campaigned tirelessly for election against all odds. And between 1929 and 1931, Margaret Bonfield became the UK's first woman cabinet minister after being named the Minister of Labour. That is a profoundly important anniversary in our country's history, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I seek your advice about how it can be marked on the record of this House?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady for her point of order and for giving me notice of it. All I can say is that I think the Honourable Lady has answered her own point of order in drawing our attention to this anniversary in the way that she has done. Order. Before I call the Right Honourable Member for Fareham to make her personal statement, I remind the House that such statements are heard in silence and without interruption. And if anybody feels that they can't abide by that, they are welcome to leave now. So I repeat that.
Trying to clear the house.
In silence and without interruption. Personal statement, Suella Braverman.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to make this statement, and I'd like to put on record my wishes to Mr. Speaker and that he makes a speedy recovery. Madam Deputy Speaker, serving in Cabinet for just under 4 years has been a true honour, and I'm thankful for the opportunity and grateful to the many civil servants and ministers with whom I worked. We achieved a great deal in the last 12 months. Landmark legislation in the Public Order Act and the National Security Act. 20,000 new police officers, more than England and Wales have ever seen before. One of the largest ever pay rises for the police. Greater powers to dismiss rogue officers, and a review of the legal protections to empower our brave firearms officers. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to talk about the crisis on which I spent more time working than any other. Mass, uncontrolled, illegal immigration. We are all here familiar with the problem. Tens of thousands of mostly young men, many with values and social mores at odds with our own, pouring into our country day after day, month after month, year after year. Many come from safe countries. Many are not refugees, but are economic migrants. All have paid thousands of pounds to criminal gangs to break into Britain. All have come from a safe country, France, who, let's face it, should be doing so much more to stop them. This is putting unsustainable pressure on our public finances and our public services. It's straining community cohesion, jeopardising national security, and harming public safety. The British people all understand this, Madam Deputy Speaker. The question is, does the government? And will it now finally act to stop it? The Prime Minister, rightly, committed to doing whatever it takes to stop the boats. And he should be commended for dedicating more time and toil than any of his predecessors to this endeavour. And unlike the Leader of the Opposition, who would rather bury his head in the sand, he has actually advanced a plan. We made some progress during my tenure as Home Secretary. The overall crossings have fallen by 30%. The number of illegal Albanian arrivals down by 90%. And we were starting to close down asylum hotels. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, crossings are down is not the same as stopping the boats. No. And as Home Secretary, I consistently advocated for legislative measures that would have secured the delivery of our Rwanda partnership as soon as the bill became law. Last summer, following defeat in the Court of Appeal, I advised that we should scrap rather than continue passage of the Illegal Migration Act bill in favour of a more robust alternative that excluded international and human rights laws. When that was rejected, I urged that we needed to work up a credible Plan B in the event of a Supreme Court loss. Following defeat in the Supreme Court, the Prime Minister has finally agreed to introduce emergency legislation, and I welcome his decision. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is now 3 weeks on from that judgment, and we are yet to see a bill. I'm told its publication is imminent, but we are running out of time. This is an emergency, and we need to see the bill now. Madam Deputy Speaker, my deeper concern, however, relates to the substance of what may be in that bill. Previous attempts have failed because they did not address the root cause of the problem. Expansive human rights laws, flowing from the European Convention on Human Rights, replicated in Labour's Human Rights Act, are being interpreted elastically by courts, domestic and foreign, to literally prevent our Rwanda plan from getting off the ground. And this problem relates to so much more than just illegal arrivals. From my time as Home Secretary, I can say that the same human rights framework is producing insanities that the public would scarcely believe. Foreign terrorists we can't deport because of their human rights. Terrorists we have to let back in because of their human rights. Foreign rapists and paedophiles who should have been removed but are released back into the community only to reoffend. Yep, because of their human rights. Violent criminals pulled off deportation flights at the last minute thanks to the help of Labour MPs, free to wander the streets and commit further horrific crimes, including murder. Protesters let off the hook for tearing down statues and gluing themselves to roads. And our brave military veterans harassed through the courts some 40 years after their service. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is no secret that I support leaving the European Convention on Human Rights and replacing the Human Rights Act with a British Bill of Rights that protects the vulnerable and our national security and finishes the job of Brexit by extricating us from the foreign court and restores real parliamentary supremacy. But I accept that the government won't do that and that it is a debate for another day. And crucially, when it comes to stopping the boats now, leaving the ECHR is not the only way to cut the Gordian knot. Emergency legislation would enable this only if it meets the following tests. Firstly, the bill must address the Supreme Court's concerns about the safety of Rwanda. Secondly, the bill must enable flights before the next election by blocking off all routes of challenge. The powers to detain and remove must be exercisable, notwithstanding the Human Rights Act, the European Convention on Human Rights, the Refugee Convention, and all other international law. Thirdly, the bill must remedy deficiencies in the Illegal Migration Act to ensure that removals can take place within days, rather than allowing individual claims and challenges which drag on for months. Fourth, the bill must enable the administrative detention of illegal arrivals until they are removed. And just as we rapidly built Nightingale hospitals to deal with COVID, so we must build Nightingale-style detention facilities to deliver the necessary capacity. Greece and Turkey have done so. Greece and Turkey have done so. And the only way to do this, as I advocated for in government, is with the support of the Ministry of Defence. Fifth, Parliament must be prepared to sit over Christmas to get this bill done. All of this, Madam Deputy Speaker, comes down to a simple question. Who governs Britain? Where does ultimate authority for the UK lie? Is it with the British people and their elected representatives? Or is it in the vague, shifting and unaccountable concept of international law? On Monday, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister announced measures that start to better reflect public frustration on legal migration. He can now follow that up with a bill that reflects public fury on illegal migration and actually stop the boats. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is now or never. The Conservative Party faces electoral oblivion in a matter of months if we introduce... The Conservative Party faces electoral oblivion in a matter of months if we introduce yet another bill destined to fail. Do we fight for sovereignty, or do we let our party die? Now, I may not have always found the right words in the past, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I refuse to sit by and allow us to fail. The trust that millions of people placed in us cannot be discarded as an inconvenient detail. If we summon the political courage to do what is truly necessary, difficult though it may be, to fight for the British people, we will regain their trust. And if the Prime Minister leads that fight, he has my total support. Thank you.
Thank the Right Honourable Lady for her personal statement, and we now move on to the presentation of bills. I will allow those who wish to leave to do so. As quickly and quietly as possible.